mean, this is super intimidating. I mean, whenever you think about this, you think sharing the gospel with somebody who looks like you, and then you think this is a monster intimidation factor, that some people are like, I am not even close to qualified to do this. And I think taking the rose-colored glasses off of it and just letting people know, sometimes we're sitting in the living rooms and the 5-year-old kids are peeing on us while YouTube is playing extremely loud on an 80-inch TV on the wall, right? While the kids are jumping around on iPads. I mean, it's like ministry is not as professional as it seems. Really, it's just getting to know people, and making mistakes is just part of the process, and it's really okay to do that. And I think everybody thinks sometimes if somebody's working with a UPG, they have everything figured out, and they'll be the first to tell you, we don't have anything figured out. We're just going and failing as fast as we can to figure out what we need to do,
Hey there, guys. Welcome back to the H3X Podcast, where we explore the head, the heart, and the hands of the multiplying church and her leaders. And together with your host, Dave Miller, he and I are going to talk to some leaders from Houston, Joe Hutchinson and Guy Caskey, as well as Dora Yuen from out in San Francisco Bay Area. I'm in New York, Dave's in OKC, and we're going to talk through this topic of helping the average practitioner go from unaware to aware in engaging unreached people groups and how they can get started. So let's jump in and hear what's happening in these cities.
One of some of the most exciting things is using soccer and sports, working with Afghanis and down in the southwest side of our city. And just again, we are big about in the city of understanding that passions are real important, that often people will come from different backgrounds, UUPs or UUPGs, and they will come into the city and all of a sudden get swallowed up into city culture. And sometimes they'll lose some of their cultural identity, even in a sense. But we've been really seeing a lot of success using soccer, and we've had entire school districts and kind of embrace they're using a 3/3 model in their approach. And the 3/3 model is simply a time of looking back, looking up, looking forward, and they're blending it in such a way that it's been embraced by schools. So they're telling stories, but they're not clearly saying these are from scripture, but they're certainly the character based, and then they're having opportunities to build relationships and share the gospel. And then I'll let Joe talk to you a whole lot more. Just one of the things that is a bit of a difficulty, as far as I see, is just us not working together. I feel like as well as we could be in those areas. And I mean, like even church to church, org to org, and being I don't know any other way to say it. Sometimes it seems like too territorial and saying, look, we talk about kingdom over congregation, but it also needs to be kingdom over organization, and even the adoption of people. I mean, we're supposed to be doing this together. So to me, that's been a real barrier for us, I would say. And I'll let Joe speak to a lot more of that in our city. We're in Houston, Texas.
Yeah, so one of the best parts about living in Houston is that the nations are here. It's one of the most diverse cities in America. It's a very welcoming city when it comes to immigration. It happens in many different ways, whether it's through business, through study, or through the refugee process, or natural immigration as well. Houston is a welcoming city. There's a lot of programs, resources, so people kind of settle here. What I've seen that's been amazing, especially in this last wave with the Afghans coming in, is very unique pockets to be able to serve these people and to share the gospel with them. Just the other night, I was with a group that is a Christian-based legal service that, as they're coming over, and they have a lot of different legal situations, whether it's family stuff that's going on or visa situations or whatever, that they're able to serve them, not only just give legal advice, but actually walk life and through the legal process with them, represent them in court, and all along the way sharing the gospel with them. And so that was just really awesome to see. Honestly, I felt like the Afghan wave kind of blew us over. There's a lot of people who mobilized really quickly, but there was just so much in such a short little time that we're still catching up. But like Guy said, praise God that some of our partners who are using the 3/3 process to be able to share truths from the Word of God. I mean, the school district that he's talking about is one of the most diverse school districts in our area. Not only are there Afghans that are in that school district, but there's tons of Vietnamese, there's Burmese, Hispanics. That area that they're located is littered with mosques and temples and other places of worship, that it is a very strategic place, and to have kind of the doors open up is amazing. I agree with Guy. I think the one thing that we have struggled with is how to work with each other well, especially when people adopt a people group. They kind of take a little possession of it, and they kind of want to like hold on to it sometimes, instead of being open-handed, knowing that this is God's and that we need to work together to see this done. How can the legal service and the soccer ministry and the physical aid and all that come together to be able to clearly have a path for the gospel to be going forth and to be multiplying disciples and planting churches through it? And really, a lot of the humanitarian stuff is doing a pretty good job, I think, at working together. It's really more the disciple multiplication and church planning side that we have to do a better job of laying down our egos and logos to be able to get the job done. And so there's a lot of opportunity here that gets me excited, but it's still a lot of area where we can grow.
Dory, you want to jump in? What's happening in the Bay Area? Does that resonate for you, or what's your situation looking like?
I feel like all the big cities are trying to fight for that most diverse city in the United States kind of situation. Like, I mean, Houston, come on. I thought it was San Francisco, you know? You'd be saying New York, you know? So anyway, so I thought we had the most diverse, city, at least, some of the most diverse cities, among the U.S. And it has been that way for many, many years. When it comes to whether us being the most friendliest, I don't think so, because for the last, I'd say 10, 15 years, the housing situation has been really, like pushing people out from a lot of the inner cities, especially for the immigrants. It's just really difficult for them to stay, and then in terms of refugees, we're trying to work with a resettlement agency, and turns out they're saying, like, basically for California in general, they're closing off, the sending, like, as in, like, they're not going to allow any refugees to settle in California unless they have like relatives or somebody that they can kind of support, the families, and or know someone there, because it's just impossible to pretty much help any family to settle. So yeah, it has been difficult. So for me, I don't really work with, or maybe I haven't been able to connect with people who wanted to partner together. So the way I reach out is more like in an organic kind of way. I basically just go out and do prayer walking, and meet people in the grocery store, try to look for the little class stores to maybe get into and get to know people there, and then from there, when I find a personal piece, I'll try to get a phone number and then try to start a Bible study within the DBS, with the 3/3 group with them. And I have a couple of success, doing working with the Palestinians, working with the Turks, the Berbers, and the Yemeni people. One of the greatest success, I would say, is working with the Berbers. They're the North Africans. Most of them are from Algeria, and at least in our city they are, and they're really open to the gospel, but also because of the difficulties, to support themselves and to stay in the city, they literally have to work 3 jobs. Most of the time, like 7 days a week for 16 hours a day. So that is stopping us from continuing to have a more consistent, gathering with these people. But they do show interest, and the interesting thing, which I think a lot of you would know, when you work with these people, they tend to come in a flock. You reach out to 3, they would bring back 30. So yeah, we definitely, in terms of like connections, we get to do a lot of that, but it is also, there's also some tension there, especially with the housing situation. Yeah, a lot. And in fact, the Yemeni family that I reached out to has already moved to Indianapolis, and the other Turkish family, it's now in Dallas. So a lot of people that we start working with, they ended up moving somewhere else.
So a lot of transitory nature of people moving, and just a lot of change.
Yeah, more so than before. And talking about Afghans, we used to have, I don't know, I think maybe we still have one of the most like, I would say the biggest Afghani immigrant group, in the United States, in Fremont, in our city, in the Bay Area. But when it comes to talking about like, oh, we're supposed to see a lot of refugees, Afghan refugees coming in the last year. Well, not as much as we thought we wanted to see, because with the housing market, so expensive, that they're either not moving to California at all, or they're being pushed out to Stockton, to some of these cities that are about 3 hours, 4 hours away from us. So they're here, but not like in the Bay Area. So a lot of the Afghans are reaching out to in the city of Fremont are the diplomats that have been here for 30 years. They kind of came many years ago, in a very different situation.
Hey, can I speak to that transient side? Because I really believe that's something that I love, how we're growing nationwide, city to city, because I've seen that too. I was working amongst the Burmese people here in Houston, and I remember one summer specifically where 95% of the Burmese Muslims left for Fort Wayne, Indiana. And because they built a mosque up there, they have a community center up there. And in that time, what came in was the Rohingya people that filled in those apartments that the Burmese Muslims left. I loved that we are now collaborating city to city, that when these type of things happen, that we now have friends and who we consider family in those other places that can follow up, that we may realize that, hey, we're just planting a seed here, but someone else is going to water later, but really it's God who causes the growth. And so it's a wonderful teaming effort happening across the nation now with UPGs, because they are more transient when they first get here. They're trying to get settled. They're very collective in their culture compared to us Westerners, who are very individualistic. And so it was crazy. I'll never forget that summer. Literally some of my neighbors, like that morning walking outside, they're like, we're moving today. No warning. And then they're gone. And so having networks across the nation is going to be so beneficial going forward.
I think that's really good what you bring up there, Joe. And I think that springboards into the larger conversation that we wanted to have today. And I'd love to hear if any of you guys want to speak into among those that we know that are practitioners, that are making disciples, that are planting churches, what do you feel like are some of the barriers towards greater awareness or engagement with unreached people groups? Because if that is happening, there's transitory and people are moving, that means that people could be right next to us, no matter where we are, that could be engaged with the gospel if we're aware of that. What do you feel like are the barriers right now to a collaborative engagement across the U.S.?
I think it's vision casting, to make sure that we have a here and there mentality, and vision casting for the nations in the midst of vision casting for our neighborhoods. I think a lot of organic church planting and disciple making, we've gone about it in a geographic way, and we'll say no place left, city, and then we just think about our neighborhoods. So we think about our context, but if we're honest, we group with people who are similar to us. And so it doesn't give us the best nations focus. But to remind ourselves that the US, I think, Dory, why you said there's like this competition sometimes of who's the most diverse city. The US is one of the most diverse nations, and we are blessed to be here, that there's not a typical look of American, because there's different shades of Americans, there's different economic statuses, it's a beautiful, beautiful place of diversity. And in that, we can reach the nations here within our borders, which is amazing.
Yeah, I certainly affirm that, and think we need kind of a team of teams approach where we are working together towards the same goal, and not. We've had some conflict around some people. If you're not pursuing UPGs, or you're pursuing a passion or a place, then you're not really doing the Great Commission work. And we're like, man, let's all do the work together. And we've got some who are focused and targeted on this group, some are this passion that will meet many different people. But man, we got to work together towards our city for the same goal of gospel saturation and multiplication across our city until there's no place left. So to me, part of it is casting that vision in the context of a team of teams approach and really working together.
I mean, at this point, I mean, I see what Joe you're saying, and I definitely agree, and Guy too, and I wanted to see more of that. I haven't experienced that yet, but that doesn't mean it can't happen. Because honestly, I did have like families who move away from us, and I did try to look for teams and practitioners to help, to support, and to continue to cultivate the relationship that I already started building. But it's just, I guess in general, I would have to say this, that we really have to raise more awareness and cast vision. Some people, they're not willing to do it. It's more like they just haven't had a chance to get exposed to working with UPGs. If we can help and walk alongside with them, I think maybe we can have more people teaming up to do this, and eventually we will get better at this.
I would love to figure out how to overcome those barriers of getting that team of teams approach and networking people together. I sat with a group of pastors not too long ago out in the western part of my state. And whenever I told them I was working with UPGs, they asked what country I go to and how often I go. And I said, well, I go to about 6 or 7 countries about once a week. And he looked at me like I was crazy. And I was like, they all live in our city, brother. And they were honestly super surprised. And one of them, didn't even know that we had 1,500 Afghans that moved to our city just less than a year ago. Just no awareness of it whatsoever. So I appreciate the more we can get the word out that this is something that is in our back door. To me, it just seems almost crazy that someone wouldn't understand that the nations are literally in our back door. I mean, it just seems, I'm flabbergasted that somebody wouldn't see that. But at the same time, I also know that there was a point when I was reading Jonah, and God said there's 120,000 that don't yet know me that you need to pay attention to. And then I looked up UPGs in Oklahoma City and figured out there's about 120,000 of them. Total population wise of people who didn't speak English or Spanish in our city. And so, just 6 years ago, I was oblivious to how widespread it was in our city. So the awareness conversation is huge. And I think there's a lot of people who have that heart for missions. It's just that they still have that mentality that I've got to buy a plane ticket and go somewhere in order to see that happen.
I love what you're saying, Dave. And to your point, Guy, I think you were saying it and together with Joe, but I think sometimes it almost can, within the so-called movement world or DMM, CPM, we have to throw around all the language, but there can almost be this like pitting against of those that are engaging UPGs and then way over here, and this gap between. And to your point, Dory, I think sometimes as we've been talking through this, even in the last few weeks, through this conversation of how do we take a step, sometimes the only step we vision cast is way over here of you've got to have all the language and be really aware of what unreached people groups are in your city and how to speak that language and how to share the gospel. It's like just this high bar rather than meeting people where they are and beginning to talk about awareness and taking steps towards adoption. And so I almost wonder if, as we talk about this conversation of increasing collaboration, community, connecting around that, if it's identifying what's a manageable next step for most practitioners that are already making disciples, but maybe just are not at a place where they're super aware of those that are around them, and they haven't taken even just the basic level, like what Dory is exemplifying in this call today. As we're talking through this, she just prayer walked. She went to her store. She becomes aware of who's around her by simply prayer walking and praying and beginning to talk to people. And that's how you find out. And so Dave's looking up stats, but that only goes so far. And he would be the first to tell you this. You've got to actually get to know the first name of somebody who shops at the store up the street, or it's just something that's way out there and not accessible. So I almost wonder if it's like, what's the low bar? Put it on the bottom shelf next step for the average practitioner.
Mark, too, I'd say, this is super intimidating. Whenever you think about this, you think sharing the gospel with somebody who looks like you, and then you think, how do I share the gospel to someone who may not speak my language or be from my culture? This is a monster intimidation factor that some people are like, I am not even close to qualified to do this. And I think taking the rose-colored glasses off of it and just letting people know, sometimes we're sitting in the living rooms and the 5-year-old kids are peeing on us while YouTube is playing extremely loud on an 80-inch TV on the wall, right?
Yeah.
While the kids are jumping around on iPads. It's like ministry is not as professional as it seems. Really, it's just getting to know people, and making mistakes is just part of the process, and it's really okay to do that. And I think everybody thinks sometimes if somebody's working with a UPG, they have everything figured out, and they'll be the first to tell you, we don't have anything figured out. We're just going and failing as fast as we can to figure out what we need to do,
For me, I do have some practical steps, ask, where do we find these people in our neighborhood? Well, I think we can start with just getting to know our neighborhood by maybe look for 10 grocery stores that are not the big box stores, and try to get into those stores and get to know the people there, even the liquor stores. Because you might think that liquor stores are, just, selling liquor and cigarettes, but usually the owner are the people that we probably, are not familiar, with, ask them where they're from, and see what kind of answer you'd be getting. And then I would definitely, try to take a couple Uber rides, being able to meet some people there, at least get an idea of who's actually driving Uber in your city. Yep. Right. And with that, you can definitely make a list. And I'm pretty sure most of the cities that we're in right now, you definitely find people that are from at least 10 different countries, if not 20, within a few blocks in the place where you live. Well, prayer walking definitely helps to get to know people, but these are, to me, some of the first steps. Or maybe do Google search for research, on the temples, Buddhist temples, mosques, and see what you get. There are websites too, but we can start with Google to find out.
I was just saying, here the liquor stores, they're Lebanese, most of them. And then if you need to valet park, that's where they'll be from the Horn of Africa. So there's also things like that where you'll find certain occupations or places that tend to have a certain people group.
Well, I love that we are kicking this around today and starting this conversation. And I think what I hear from you guys is God is at work. You guys are practitioners and doing it. And if we're going to get more people in the game, kind of the bottom line of what's coming out of this conversation today is we've got to increase awareness and help to vision cast clearly and get people to begin to adopt those that are just even on their street in their neighborhood by getting some exposure, finding out who's around them. And that's a starting place.
Very much so.
Well, thank you guys for talking through this today.
Great. Thanks for having us.